What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you another episode of the Waiver Wire show I'm running currently on the Fantasy Stock Exchange channel. Again, you guys did not see me this past week. Again, I was doing an accounting midterm, had to study, had to get that done. So Mikey filled in, but we're back. We're ready. Hopefully we pass accounting. We don't know yet, but ready to go through these top waiver wire additions going into week 7 of fantasy football. So definitely exciting to see who could really benefit your lineup. Again, this is in crunch time. This is in time where you need to win your matchups. You need to try to make that playoff run. And hopefully a couple of these guys that you can snag off waivers can really help you with that. So before we get into these top waivers, love the feedback that you guys have been giving to the channel. Just want to keep seeing that like, comment, subscribe ratio keep going up because I've seen plenty of your guys' comments commenting right away, showing the support. So myself, Bush, Mikey are definitely appreciative of you guys doing that. So before we get into these top waivers, though, gonna hit the intro. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to be going into the top waivers, and we got to start off at the quarterback position. And to me, the top waiver wire pickup / streamer at the quarterback position this week is going to be Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback from the Carolina Panthers, currently at 19% ownership. And his week 6 versus the Chicago Bears, wasn't great. I mean, 216 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. 8 rushes for 48 yards. So not a typical day that you want to see from your quarterback, but we don't pick up players based off what they did this week, what they did last week. We do pick up players and start players based off what they should be doing this week and the next week. And for Teddy Bridgewater, the 2 matchups that he plays in these next upcoming 2 weeks, week 7, week 8, are glorious. I mean, New Orleans Saints have given up the 3rd most points to the quarterback position thus far, and the Atlanta Falcons have been the single worst defense at giving up points to the quarterback position. So, as I mentioned, I mean, overall, the Saints have really been a disappointment in terms of stopping other teams. So basically, they've been a disappointment defensively. I mean, they've allowed a ton of points to the quarterback position. We're talking about the likes of Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, and Derek Carr were all able to exploit them through the air in recent weeks. So, I mean, with Bridgewater, aside from these 2 pretty awful, I will say, showings against stingy pass defenses in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Chicago Bears, actually both being in the top 3 least allowed points to the quarterback position thus far. I mean, he's been pretty good overall throughout the year during other matchups. And as I mentioned, those 2 glorious matchups he has in the upcoming 2 weeks against an underperforming Saints D and a pathetic Falcons D, I mean, he should be top quality streamer in both of those 2 weeks and should be a top 15 at minimum quarterback in each week. So if you're talking about FAAB potential for this guy, if you're really in a quarterback pinch, you need someone to start. Bridgewater can definitely give you value. I'd say probably about a 3 to 5% type bid for him. Again, the matchup's very juicy, and other than those 2 tough games against really stingy defenses, Bridgewater's been good. So I would fire him into my lineup with confidence. You can pick up Bridgewater and put him in your lineup right away. So talking about an honorable mention perhaps for a quarterback streamer, I'd be talking about Daniel Jones, quarterback from the New York Giants, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday Night Football. So definitely stay tuned for Jones. Again, if you're just talking about it through, I mean, Jones hasn't been great as a player, but the Eagles not necessarily haven't been great against opposing quarterbacks. And if you're talking about it, anything can happen in a division. So we know that Jones is a little more turnover prone, but at the same time, if this could be a high scoring affair between him and Carson Wentz turning the ball over in his own end, Daniel Jones going to have some opportunities to score as well. So definitely should be interesting. I would prefer Bridgewater, but if you're really in a pinch, Daniel Jones available, you have nobody else, I wouldn't absolutely hate it, especially if you're in a pinch. So going into the next position, though, and this is another guy that I've kind of mentioned a lot. Again, for reference, the next position is the running back position. Gotta say that next time. But this is a player that I've mentioned a lot on the channel. I mentioned him 2 weeks ago, and for some reason, he's still owned in less than 50% of Yahoo leagues. So don't let this happen. It's Justin Jackson, running back from the Los Angeles Chargers. Again, when I saw that he's had 47% Yahoo ownership, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, yes, week 6 he did have a bye week, but if you look at his stats with the Saints, I mean, I got to pat myself on the back because I did say going into that week that Justin Jackson would be in that sort of Austin Eckler role, and it came to fruition. I mean, 15 rushing attempts for 71 rushing yards and 5 receptions for 23 receiving yards. So, I mean, he was fully involved. He was that efficient, not change of pace, but efficient runner, pass catcher out of the backfield for the Los Angeles Chargers, while Josh Kelly was that in between the tackles grinder, exactly like I predicted on the show for the record. So, again, not really a week 6 to base off, but went over those week 5 stats. If you're looking at the matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 7, I mean, Jacksonville's just been the 5th worst team against opposing running backs this season, and in consecutive weeks have allowed 39.1, 11.3, and 25.8 half PPR points to Joe Mixon, David Johnson, and DeAndre Swift, respectively. I mean, to me, Jackson should provide low-end RB2 value as soon as this week and for the foreseeable future. I mean, as long as Austin Eckler is out, Justin Jackson is going to give you that low-end RB2 type value that is just going to supplement incredible value, especially off the waiver wire. So if you're talking about FAAB, you can get a low-end RB2 or at minimum a high-end RB3 flex play at this point in the season. That's all the FAAB. Well, I don't care how much you have left. You have 60%, 70%, 75%, 80%. I don't care what you have left. All of it's going on Justin Jackson because he can give you that RB depth that is crucial at this point because the scarcity around running backs in fantasy football right now is insane. So if you can get a cheap waiver wire running back that you can plug into your lineup right away like a Justin Jackson, I'm sorry, that's taking all the FAAB. So going into the next option, if you don't have that available or someone has Justin Jackson or someone outbids you on Justin Jackson, I'll talk about the lesser option. And Boston Scott, running back from the Philadelphia Eagles, currently at 15% ownership according to Yahoo Leagues. So if you're looking at his week 6 stat line per se against the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, not all that impressive. 2 attempts, 4 rushing yards, 4 targets, 2 receptions, and 5 receiving yards. The reason that he is here, as we all pretty much know at this point, is the status of Miles Sanders. With the news of the Miles Sanders injury, and not being able to suit up at minimum this week. I mean, Boston Scott is just ready to step in as an RB3 flex with RB2 type upside, given how depleted the Eagles' offense is as a whole. So, talking about that week 7 matchup against the Giants, I mean, the Giants have somewhat limited opposing team main running backs recently. If you're talking about Antonio Gibson, they stifled him. Darrell Henderson, they stifled him. And Jerick McKinnon wasn't really a factor in terms of efficiency on the ground in recent weeks. I mean, still though, if Boston Scott is going to step into the role with Miles Sanders out, the volume is just going to be too much to ignore in this matchup, and I would consider Scott as a flex-worthy play even as soon as this week. So, again, with Miles Sanders out, you're talking about a FAAB potential. You have to see the specifics into how long he's going to be out per se. At this point, I know for sure he's out next week. He probably is out the week after, if I were to guess. But keep updated. If you guys see on Tuesday that he's expected to be out 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, make sure you get Boston Scott. I would say FAAB potential would be about 30%, maybe a little bit higher if Miles Sanders is ruled out on the larger side. But again, with Miles Sanders out, Boston Scott should be able to return you some high-end flex-type value for the foreseeable future. And as I mentioned with Justin Jackson, I mean, having that at the RB position is crucial at this time of the year, given how many injuries, how many inefficiencies, disappointments that we have seen thus far. So definitely would be willing to put a decent chunk of my FAAB bid on Boston Scott. So honorable mentions at this position, I'm going to mention the Jets running back. So again, the news of Le'Veon Bell signing with the Chiefs and ultimately getting cut by the Jets does increase the value of the other running backs there. If you're talking about Frank Gore at 31% ownership and LaMichael Pirine at 17%. Talking about a PPR league, I would prefer Pirine given that he's more involved in the passing game. He's a more young, fresher, exciting option. Maybe the Jets, dumpster fire franchise, want to see the young guy getting more reps. And for now, if you're talking about like a standard league, I wouldn't mind getting Gore. Maybe you need a low-end flex play. You're in a pinch. You have guys on bye. You need to start someone last second instantly. I mean, Frank Gore could probably get the job done for you, give you like 8 7 points in that spot. So don't hate Gore either. Again, these guys aren't going to be more than 5% FAAB, I would say, because, again, they still play for the Jets. And this guy, JaMycal Hasty, running back from the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, he's just a name that's really exploded these past couple of weeks. I mean, he was a guy who was undrafted coming out of college. He looked good. I mean, he played at Baylor. I liked him out of the draft, but didn't get drafted in the process. Landed on the Kyle Shanahan-led San Francisco 49ers backfield. And as we've seen, I mean, they have been depleted by injury. Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman. I mean, Jerick McKinnon missed a little bit as well. So if you're looking at it, I mean, I do think with the obviously recent news of Raheem Mostert being expected to put on IR, I do think that Jerick McKinnon is going to be operating as the 1A, probably getting about 65% of snaps, somewhere around that. And if that's the case, I mean, there's clearly a role for JaMycal Hasty working behind Jerick McKinnon to be able to garner about 10, 12 touches per game. If he's able to do that, I mean, the efficiency of the scheme that Kyle Shanahan runs mixed in with the overall rushing attack in general, JaMycal Hasty can definitely give you, again, I say the term a lot, but flex value. Especially he should be a name that goes under the radar while people are going after those higher price options. So if you can get him for like, I don't know, 5, 10% bid, maybe even more if Mostert's ruled out more, and there's a little bit more talk around him going into the week. But yeah, I definitely like Hasty. I definitely think he can give you some value, especially working behind Jerick McKinnon for the real life Niners. So don't mind those options, but we're getting into the wide receiver position. And this is a very exciting position for week 7 waivers, talking about this week. And the first name that I got to mention, Mike Williams, wide receiver from the LA Chargers, 45% ownership in Yahoo leagues. Again, week 6. I talked about it with Justin Jackson. Week 6, the Los Angeles Chargers had their bye week. We get that. Week 7, he goes to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mike Williams showed out on Monday Night Football prior to his bye week, as we saw against those New Orleans Saints. I mean, he returned from injury to the tune of 5 catches, 109 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns against the Saints. What the heck? But, okay, the rapport we've seen between Williams and Herbert has looked like the real deal. And should the offense continue looking legit, continue looking high power, continue looking like a stud of a unit with Herbert at the helm, as it has thus far, I mean, Mike Williams is going to be a serious problem for defenses to try to control. Again, monitor the status of Keenan Allen. I do think he's going to play this week. But even if he does or doesn't, Mike Williams should definitely be a huge figure in the offense, especially, again, I mentioned Justin Jackson receiving an Austin Eckler-type workload. He's not going to get the targets or the target share that Austin Eckler does on any given week. Mike Williams is going to supplement some of those targets. The whole offense is going to supplement some of those targets. So overall, filling out Mike Williams, I mean, he's a talented outside receiver that finally has a quarterback that's able to get him the ball on the outside, put it in the air for him to be able to make plays in the air. So definitely like Mike Williams. Again, if you're talking about a potential FAAB bid for a guy I view probably as a wide receiver 3 or so rest of the season, it's going to be 35%. I mean, the usage and rapport with Herbert have been encouraging. He's looked good as a player coming off that injury. And in general, Mike Williams has always had the talent. He just hasn't really had that type of quarterback that's been willing to put him in the spots to end up being the receiver that he can ultimately become. So that game against the Saints was really encouraging. I definitely want to see how Mike Williams progresses, because the way he played, he could definitely be a wide receiver 2 down the stretch if the usage continues at the rate it was. But to play it safe, we'll say he's a wide receiver 3 for the foreseeable future. Okay, second name, a guy that y'all know that Bush is in love with. I'm going to be talking about Henry Ruggs, wide receiver from the Las Vegas Raiders, currently at 47% ownership according to Yahoo Leagues. Now, week 6 had his bye week. We know this. And week 7, his boy, his coach, John Gruden, goes up against his former team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Bush's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Bush is going to see his guy go up against his team. So it's definitely a weird week for him in that regard. But talking about Henry Ruggs, in the 3 games that he has played for the Raiders thus far this season, he has been absolutely dynamic. He's averaging nearly 30 yards per reception, and coming off an injury just 2 weeks ago, put up 118 yards and a touchdown in his first game back. Again, while the matchup versus the Bucks isn't very ideal given the strength of their defense, particularly in their cornerbacks, Ruggs is just a type of player that can break a game wide open on any given target, any given catch, any given play in any given game. So if you're looking at it, I mean, he should be owned in all leagues at this point due to the explosiveness he possesses. And the fact that he's still available, again, as I mentioned, in 53% of leagues is just crazy to think about. He has a clear opportunity to operate as the number 2 target in the offense behind Darren Waller. Is young, is explosive, doesn't need a ton of targets to give you a ton of value back. And yet, less than 50% of people are owning him. So, again, if you're talking about FAAB, I would say about 35% similar to Mike Williams. But, man, I'm oozing over the potential that Henry Ruggs could have in this offense operating as the number 2 weapon behind Darren Waller. So, going into the third name, the lesser-known option, if you will, but one that definitely deserves his respect given the play that he has shown exuded thus far for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to be talking about Travis Fulgham, wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, currently at 31% ownership in Yahoo leagues. Glossing over his Week 6 stat line, 6 receptions on 10 targets for 75 receiving yards and a touchdown. Week 7 against the Giants on Thursday Night Football. As I mentioned, a lot of Eagles today for the record. I didn't mean to do that, but Fulgham is just simply the only healthy body left for the Eagles, with Zach Ertz and Miles Sanders joining a list that includes Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, and Dallas Goedert on the injury report. So while going under the radar to start the year, I mean, Fulgham has just been quietly dominant these last few weeks, recording 57 receiving yards, 152, and 75 receiving yards with a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. So, I mean, he's proven to be the Eagles' wide receiver 1, a guy that Carson Wentz has leaned on with all those injuries to the other guys thus far. And while the matchup against the Giants per se should be more difficult, again, I have to look at the actual matchups. I'm assuming that Bradbury would be on him, given the usage that Fulgham has seen, given the usage that Bradbury has seen as a shadow man. So going under the assumption that Bradbury is shadowing, it does hurt him a lot in that regard. But, I mean, in terms of volume, in terms of usage, he should still be a flex-worthy play as soon as this week, and ultimately could be a wide receiver 3 down the stretch in more favorable matchups. So, again, for the time being, as I mentioned, he's a wide receiver 3 flex play for me, with the potential to ultimately even improve on that given how great he's been used by Carson Wentz. So if you're talking about FAAB potential, a little bit lower than those other 2 guys, I would say, but still a good 30% again. And the waiver wire at this point, there's no need to really hold on, tug at your FAAB. Go get players that can help you get wins right now. Fulgham is a guy who can do that. Yeah, he's not the sexiest name. He's not a guy who's going to be valuable in Week 13 per se. But if he can get you wins in Week 7, Week 8, Week 9, that's all you need him to do, and that 30% will be well used. So, again, I like Fulgham a lot and should be operating as the Eagles' wide receiver 1 for the time being. So, talking about honorable mentions at the wide receiver position, we're going into guys that are both on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to mention both of them in Laviska Shenault and Keelan Cole. If I had to prefer one or the other, I'd go Shenault. Being at the 46% ownership, I would prefer him, given the fact that when we've seen G.J. Chark operating 100%, Gardner Minshew playing in his bag, Laviska Shenault has been really able to work the underneath area of the field for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Keelan Cole, I mean, it's not a slight on him. 29% ownership. It's not a slight on him saying I would prefer Visca, but Keelan Cole's been pretty efficient, been pretty overall involved in each and every week. And he showed out last week. 6 catches, 143 receiving yards. He's been a consistent product in that receiver group for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So given how much they've been throwing the ball anyways, I like all those options. So definitely encouraging signs for both the receivers and Gardner Minshew in terms of the ultimate volume we should see accumulating over these next few weeks. Talking about going into the tight end position. We're going to be talking about Irv Smith Jr., tight end from the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, this guy is just a freak. If you're talking about him, he's an athletic freak of nature coming out of Alabama. And these last 2 weeks, he has shown the heck out. Last week against the Atlanta Falcons, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 55 receiving yards. Guys, Irv Smith has finally been given the opportunity. He's finished with 5 targets. And accumulated over 70+% of the snaps in each of the last 2 weeks. And he's just provided efficient fantasy days with 4 receptions and 55+ receiving yards in each of the last 2 weeks. So on his current efficiency and usage these last 2 weeks, I mean, if this sustains, Irv is going to be a fringe tight end one for the rest of the season. So if you're able to get a cheap starter off waivers, especially at a position as scarce as the tight end position, I mean, Smith is the answer, and you should be able to get him cheaper than normal because of the Vikings' upcoming bye week for this week. So normally I would say bid even more, but you can get him for like 20% at this point. I would do that. And that should be able to win it, given the fact that a lot of tight end needy teams need an option that can play right now, play this upcoming week. And Irv Smith just isn't able to provide that for you, given that he has his bye week. So if you get him for 20%, stash him, have him ready for week 8. I mean, he could be a league winner down the stretch, given the athleticism, given the efficiency he has provided on his target so far. So definitely love myself Irv Smith Jr. He is the top priority tight end for the week. Going into number 2, we'll be talking about Trey Burton, tight end, from the Indianapolis Colts, currently at 20% ownership on Yahoo Leagues. So week 6 against the Cincinnati Bengals, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 58 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. And, if that wasn't enough, he just wanted to run some wildcat on the 1-yard line, one carry, 1 yard, 1 touchdown, as efficient as it gets. But going into next week, he actually has a week 7 bye week. So talking about overall involvement for Burton since returning from injury, he's recorded 5+ targets and 4+ receptions in back-to-back weeks and has operated as the tight end one for the Colts, basically draining all of Doyle and Ali Cox's value in the process. So it'd be interesting to see the usage past the bye week, how they kind of operate these 3 talented tight ends. But given the involvement so far these past 2 weeks, it is worth, in my opinion, throwing a small dart throw at the former Baron Eagle. So yeah, I mean, Trey Burton's been playing like a low-end tight end one, and for the foreseeable future, yes, it's kind of an unknown to see if he's going to be able to hold that role, but he's still worth about a 5-7% bid, give or take. If you're in a pinch in week 8, you need a guy who can come in. I do think Trey Burton can ultimately supplement some top 15 numbers in that time. So honorable mentions at this position. This guy really specifically has to do with the status of Jonnu Smith. If it releases on Tuesday that Jonnu Smith is missing at least a week, significant time, whatever the time frame is, go pick up Anthony Ferkser, tight end from the Tennessee Titans. He's going to be available in your leagues. Nobody's going to be owning him. He's going to be less than 10% owned. I don't actually have the stat in front of me, but nobody's owning Anthony Ferkser unless it's a deep dynasty league. So, again, keep the status updates for Jonnu Smith. If on Tuesday night it says, he's going to miss the next 2 weeks, go make a bid for Anthony Ferkser. I would even put him at 2 on this list behind Irv Smith Jr. in that situation, and I could understand playing him right away given that he is able to play for you next week. And the other honorable mention I'm going to say is Darren Fells, tight end from the Houston Texans. I mean, this guy is he's boring, but he produces. 6 for 85 and a touchdown just this past week. Again, his value is kind of contingent on the status of Jordan Akins, in my opinion. If both of them are playing, they kind of hinder each other. But if one of them is out, I mean, the other one's going to be a top 15 tight end on that week. So monitor that situation. If Jordan Akins is still going to miss time with that concussion, definitely put a bid in for Darren Fells. I wouldn't be at all worried having to throw him into my tight end position last second, given if you have Mark Andrews who's on bye, you need to throw Darren Fells into the tight end position. I would not be opposed to that. So that's going over my overall top waiver wire pickups at the skill positions. Let's just talk about 2 defenses less than 50% owned that you can plug into your defense or DST spot and expect immediate production from them. That's going to be, first of all, the Philadelphia Eagles defense going up against the New York Giants. Kind of mentioned it when talking about Daniel Jones, but the Giants just turn and turn and turn and turn and turn the ball over. Partially to blame, or mostly to blame, is going to be Daniel Jones, quarterback from the New York Giants. So talking about a defense going up against the Giants again. Giants are not a good offense in general. They've scored 20 points in just 2 of their, or 20 plus points in just 2 of their games thus far this year. I mean, the Eagles are going to put pressure on at home at Thursday Night Football against the New York Giants offense that has frankly struggled and has turned the ball over. So that's what you look for when you're looking for defenses. Who's going to limit the opposing team to in scoring? The Eagles should be able to do that. Who's going to make the other team turn the ball over a ton? The Giants are turnover prone. And ultimately, who's going to be able to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback? The Giants' tackles have not been good thus far. And Andrew Thomas got benched last week. It's just been kind of a mess as what's going on with that overall Giants front in general. So definitely target that defense that's going up against them. And it frankly has to be the Eagles defense. So enough giving the Eagles praise because I'm done with that. The next defense I'm actually going to be mentioning is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers defense going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 29% ownership. Again, not a great week per se of streamable defenses, but Chargers should definitely be able to get you done. Maybe get you, I don't know, 7-8 points in a default scoring league. Keep the scoring down. I mean, the Jaguars have kind of turned the ball over in bunches every now and then, so should be able to capitalize on that. But definitely like the Chargers for this week in an ultimate potential start right away for your I don't know. It's the defensive streamer. You guys know what I mean. But overall, if you guys have made it this far in the video, if you guys have made it this far in the overall, I guess you could say my butchering of that defensive list, make sure you go comment section, Daniel, you don't know how to talk, or something like that. I know Crocomon and Skater are gonna be seeing that and just laughing their butts off. But yeah, if you made it this far in the video, though, I really appreciate it. Helps the algorithm a ton. If you guys want to do other stuff to help the algorithm, make sure you go hit that like button. Gets us recommended to more people. Comment down below what are your thoughts on the waiver wire week 4 fantasy football. And if you're enjoying the content, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Again, over 70% of the views on the channel are from people that just aren't subscribed. So if you're enjoying the content, you're watching it a lot, why not? On the road to 2K, we're about 20 away. Let's make it happen in these next 2 days, boys. Come on. Fire up. Step up. Let's get her done. Anyways, this is the Week of Waiver Wire Show. I will see you for next week, Week 8 waivers. But until then, peace out, y'all.